Hello, I'm Lindley Gooden, reformed journalist and curious human. Welcome back to Explainiacs. Now this time we're jumping into the mysterious mind of the comedy writer and performer. What does it take to make a career out of it, and what can experience of the industry teach younger writers, or indeed any of us who like a good giggle? I'm delighted to gently tickle the underbelly of comedy with a man who I've known since I had a hairline. He's a friend, an actor, an author, presenter, and for more than 40 years, a freelance waster. His name is Bob Sinfield. How lovely to have you with us, Bob, from an upstairs somewhere in Surrey.
Hello, I'm very glad to say that I never had a hairline in all the time I've known you.
Explainiacs Biography.
So Bob Sinfield has been delivering radio and TV to our homes and theatre to theatres since the end of the 70s. He and his creations have appeared at festivals from Edinburgh to Brighton. He's written scripts for some of Britain's best-loved comedy performers, including Bob Monkhouse, Leslie Phillips, Tracey Ullman, Joan Sims, Stan Freberg and Rory Bremner. In his spare time, he loves to name drop, and his book and show, The Gag Trade, have successfully brought that into his day job too.
New subject. Description.
Let's kick off. Let's fall down our own rabbit hole. Look, how has the funny business changed since you retained your hairline, Bob?
Well, I'm not altogether convinced that it has changed very much.
Right.
Because, as you say, I've been at it for 4 decades. And when I came into it, writers were very poorly paid and didn't get very much recognition. So, what changes have we encountered? Probably very few. I still think the best way into comedy is the same as it was when I started, which is to write on spec for radio programs. And if you're any good, the material will get on.
Explainiacs. Personal stories and lessons learned.
In comedy, the whole point is to tell the truth about people.
I think it has to be said there's a lot of people who choose comedy. It's not the people who were chosen for the netball team.
I went to the Rose Bruford College of Speech and Drama in swinging Sidcup with the arrogance that is peculiar to a 22-year-old unemployed ex-drama student. I rang up the BBC and said, I'd like to see one of your comedy producers. I discovered I was reasonably good at writing material. So I thought, well, I might try my hand at sending some jokes and sketches to this topical show called Weekending on BBC Radio 4. And I think they were so bowled over by my barefaced cheek that they said, yes, all right. It was the home of the comedy department, or as they used to call it, light entertainment.
Oh, I love those days. I went for an interview there as well, way back. I had one joke on Weekending. It was a topical show, obviously, so it was around the time that that leaves were stopping trains from running for the first time. It was controversial, and people were furious about it. And I think I said, Railtrack has announced the reasons why the trains aren't running. It's the wrong sort of jobs on the line.
Oh!
That was it. It gave me a route directly into journalism. I think I must have used that line many times in the news.
Oh, well done.
How does it work?
What are you trying to do when you're constructing a kind of story or a joke? What are you trying to include? What are the key elements, do you think?
Just it's as simple as this, to make people laugh. So a joke, yes, we're talking maybe a one-liner. It has to have something funny at the end of it. It's very hard to analyse it any further than that without killing the whole thing stone dead, I'd say.
Do you have to laugh when you're creating a story?
Yes. I don't see how anybody can put their version of comedy out there if it doesn't make them laugh.
But surely you can't cut out the sociopaths in comedy. They don't have to laugh out loud. You just have to appreciate the mechanics of it, surely.
Oh, there are some sociopaths. There are a lot of writers that you meet, and the best you'll ever get out of them is, yeah, that works. I've never really been a great one for the Brown study. Because I look at the world through laugh-coloured glasses.
Explainiacs, personal stories and inspiration.
Along the way, you've met some fascinating and, yes, funny, but actually, I'm sure, just really lovely human beings. Who have been the people that you've warmed to and you've worked with that you've really enjoyed?
Well, going back to that very first foray into the BBC light entertainment department, I can immediately name Griff Rhys-Jones because he was a producer there at the time. He was the man that I'd gone to see. He was my first producer on Weekending. And he and Paul Mayhew Archer, who was later producer on the same show, they were very, very good mentors, because you don't always get it right first time. And having the hide of a herd of rhinoceri is probably the best qualification you can have for being a writer.
You've got to believe that what you're writing is funny.
The nature of either writing comedy or even performing it is, it's a bit like Quicksilver. The minute you describe it, it disappears.
Explainiacs, lessons to learn.
Let's drop another name bomb. Let's talk about another Bob.
Could you be possibly speaking of Robert Allen Monkhouse?
Yes.
Wonderful gift to create a world of illusion, of fantasy, and hypnotize your audience so that they can't do without you.
He's the shining example of this. Somebody without any ego. I mean, he knew his worth as a comedian, but he was also a genuinely pleasant, modest man. He just had the gift of the gag.
Yeah.
I was asked to write a radio series about the great American comic Bob Hope. And what we wanted on the show was somebody who knew Bob Hope and preferably had worked with him.
Oh, man, you were something. You know how I feel when I see a performer like you kill the people the way you did tonight? Oh, rotten.
Apparently he was one of the meanest men in comedy, but he was a real taskmaster. And Monkhouse loved writing for him because he knew that Hope could deliver really well.
New subject. Description.
What have been your favourite moments on stage, actually, Bob? Have there been? I mean, there have been many. Yeah.
Well, I used to do a tribute routine to a 1950s hipster called Lord Buckley.
Now I can see all you cats and kittens out there jumping up and down, slapping each other on the back and hipping each other about who the greatest cat in the world is. Mr. Talenkopf, Mr. Eisenhower, Mr. Wiesenwow, Mr. Wows and Moo, Mr. Redhill, Mr. Beachhill, Mr. Churchill, and all them other hills gonna get you straight. But I am gonna put a cat on you.
Was the sweetest wailingest cat that ever stomped on this sweet swinging sphere. And they called you Shark Cat.
The Naz.
I used to enjoy doing these very much indeed, because you would really need to, it's very, very hard to describe Lord Buckley. Really, you need to hear one of his routines. And so to go on stage and do those routines was a great experience.
Explainiacs, please translate.
Okay, so what can we learn from your love of Lord Buckley? Why was playing him different to playing other people? Was it something in the character?
Characters are very important. That's the other main element. I mean, obviously, you've got to give them funny things to say, otherwise it's not going to be a comedy. Yeah. But the characters have to be strong and memorable and have some intrinsic kind of humour to them. When we used to write a series on telly called Three of a Kind. Yeah. We had very contrasting stars in that, Lenny Henry and David Copperfield. They were more old school. Lenny will hate me for saying that. Because, he changed a lot during the three series run of Three of a Kind. But then later on, he became more influenced by Tracey Ullman, who was the third member of Three of a Kind, and really the star of the show, I think. People remember that show principally for Tracey and her characterizations. She didn't want people to write jokes for her, per se. She wanted us to come up with amusing characters. And the most memorable one was the character called Roz.
It's me again, Roz, right? I used to squat in the Clan basement, Clapham basement.
It was a sort of daddy's little rich girl. I never pay any rent to that capitalist landlord.
Daddy did it for me.
Tools of the trade.
And on your many travels, Bob, is there anybody apart from Mr. Monkhouse who really stood out?
Well, David Jason was a tremendously inspiring person to work with, because he used to appear in Weekending. This was before he got hugely famous with Fools and Horses. And then you'd start to hear him work in the rehearsal and think, my God, this is funny. I didn't realize this was as funny as it is. And you look at it back on the page and think, well, actually, it's not that funny. It's him. But there's so few people can do that. By and large, performers are at the mercy of the material.
You've had many dalliances with creating your own material and then putting it on the air. I mean, that's kind of been the route for you, hasn't it, really, apart from those early stages?
Well, more recently, of course, we've had the advantage of such things as podcasting and YouTubing, which you've helped me with once or twice because you're very technically minded and I'm not.
tubed you, yeah.
So, yeah, you did, because I just sat there and sort of spoke into tubes, and
yes.
You turned it into comedy gold. But of course, those won't necessarily lead you to money. And I think that if you're able to get things on the BBC, which is a case of being quite persistent sometimes, but it eventually pays off if you're any good.
Explainiacs. Predictions.
In terms of the kind of the climate of comedy and the writing, do things excite you at the moment?
Oh, yes, absolutely. There are some tremendous comics about, and they're coming from all over the world. And luckily, we're now able to hear them. Daliso Chaponda from Malawi, he's terrifically funny. He knows how to deliver jokes and how to work the room. Olga Koch from Russia, and she's had an incredible life, like Daliso Chaponda. They both had parents who've been enmeshed in their respective countries' politics, and a lot of the humour is very dark, but it comes through as humour. There's a very good comic called Sophie Hagen, who most of her routine is about the fact that she's very big, and she manages to use that in a very positive way.
What's coming throughout our chat is that it's not just about the writing. I mean, the writing is the foundation for the ideas and the way it carries through technically almost, but actually the delivery and the energy. We are all carried along, and we're used to live comedy a lot more than we used to be. So the energy that you have and the delivery is so important these days. Almost, allowing yourself to freewheel and go for it.
Yeah, I think so. Writing is really just the first part of the package. It's always amused me that for centuries now, we have studied in school the works of Shakespeare as if they are complete entities in the way that, let's say, a novel would be. But they're not novels. They are scripts. They were written to be performed. So the writer is only there up to a point, and at that point then has to hand the material over to the performer, and the performer finishes the job. So it is a collaborative process. Could there be a better job?
Yeah.
Well, I'm very lucky because I've got, I'm an actor and a public speaker. And then on days when I'm not doing those, I sit at home and write comedy material, which I always have. I can't help it. That's the way I'm made.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. I just want to let you know where to get hold of Bob's book, The Gag Trade. You can do that on lulu.com. So that's very simple, very reasonably priced it is too. And I really hope that you've enjoyed tumbling back into comedy history and perhaps brought something back in the way that you work, write or play. But now I want to hear from you. I'm looking for inspirational explainiacs, and you may well know one. Please do get in touch with an introduction to the amazing, groundbreaking, fascinating Explainiac in your life. Any subject. And the simple mission, as always, if it's important, fascinating or fun, we want to explain it. So get in touch at explainiacs.com and let us know. Now, I'll be back with another chat very soon in about a week's time. So if you feel so moved, like, subscribe, and we'll pop it into your device when it's fresh and ready to consume. Until then, take care, good luck, and bye-bye.